It's 6 o'clock on Tuesday, the 3rd of December, 2019. Good evening, and thank you for tuning in to the English edition of Ora News. My name is Oliver, bringing you the only daily update of the local Albanian news, translated into English. Well, up first tonight, a 6-story high-rise building became the first damaged building by the November 26th earthquake to be demolished with a command blast. The building had suffered considerable damage, and was deemed uninhabitable by officials, so experts decided to bring it down using explosives. The Armed Forces engineers demolished the palace with a controlled explosion. The operation, according to experts, ended without any incidents, and according to them, the buildings were brought down on the side of the street in order to avoid damage to 2 nearby buildings. At the time of the explosion, the area was evacuated. The apartment building has been built about 6 years ago, but officials say that it suffered significant structural damage after the November 26th earthquake. Next up tonight, 7 days have passed since the start of the investigation into the effects caused by the November 26th earthquake, and the prosecution of Tirana still has no list comprising of the buildings that suffered damage. The order was sent to the police in the municipality of Tirana on November 27th, the day when the proceedings were registered, but in the absence of the information, the prosecution addressed a second letter within just a few days to 2 institutions, thus requesting the full list of dwellings affected by the earthquake and material damage. The prosecution instructs the municipality and police not to take any action without the presence of the investigative team. In addition, the prosecution requests that for any situation in which damage has been found and the demolition of the building has been recommended, the prosecution should be notified in advance to make the investigative team available to carry out the action. The prosecution also demands full technical and legal documentation of buildings in which earthquake damage has been reported. The head of Tirana's prosecutor, Elisabetta Imerai, has left the deadline to the municipality and police until December 5th to submit all the information about these dwellings. Moving on now, the President of the Republic considers it necessary that the government, led by Prime Minister Edi Rama, take the initiative to amend the urban planning legislation. After meeting with lecturers and scientific leaders, President Meta submitted 4 demands to the Prime Minister as an immediate solution to the situation created after the November 26th earthquake. The 4 demands made by President Meta were amending legislation with security elements, a new physical risk map, implementation of the Eurocode system, and financial support for scientific research, stating, "You must complete urban planning legislation with new safety elements accompanied by modern procedures in the design and construction of these facilities." The head of state emphasizes that vulnerable areas to seismic shocks should be identified and that the implementation of the Eurocode in the construction of civil and residential buildings should be ordered. Start work as soon as possible on updating and completing a new physical risk map for Albania that will include and specify seismic risk zones, as well as all areas threatened by erosion, floods, landslides, and fires. There must be full application throughout the country with the Eurocode system in civil construction and residential buildings, said Meta. At the end of his demands, Ilir Meta called for a revision of the 2020 budget to provide financial support to institutions involved in scientific research. Although in a state of emergency, the socialist majority has not forgotten about the investigation into the dismissal of Albania's president, Ilir Meta. The Inquiry Commission's meeting today began with a minute of silence for the 51 victims of the November 26th earthquake. The day after Prime Minister Edi Rama visited Ilir Meta's office for a meeting with the National Security Council, the Investigative Commission has informed that they seek a 4-month extension. In the Inquiry Commission, there were debates between the opposition and the Socialist Party, accusing each other of playing political games. This meeting did not take into account the Socialist Party's request to add to the scope of work the decree of the head of state for the member of the Constitutional Court, Marsita Jafelari. But this is expected to be a topic of discussion for the next meeting. Well, an apartment building in Lisai, located in the Belsh area, was declared uninhabitable uninhabitable after the September 21st earthquake a few months ago. The 9 families residing there were evicted from their houses by a police order. But 2 months after the earthquake, they say they have been forgotten by officials and live in tents and in extreme conditions. The engineer came and saw what happened. The municipality came, everyone came, they saw us and took us out. And now we live in tents, said one resident. The 9 families that lived there were driven out of their homes, but 2 months after the September 21st earthquake, they say they have been forgotten by the government and are still living in extreme conditions. As you can see, we are suffering. We are sleeping in tents. We are 9 people all in all. What more can I say? But despite the difficulties these residents face, they have shown to be responsive and have not challenged the police order to stay away from the palace. Otherwise, they would risk tragedy, as what happened in Thumana. Winter has already officially begun and has made living difficult, and so they are demanding action. The only help these residents have received is in the form of tents provided by the Belsh municipality, which after more than 2 months of use have deteriorated and no longer provide any protection. Finally tonight, the level of Albanian education has once again been rated as either average or poor in the international ranking system. The International Student Assessment Program, known as PISA, ranks Albania 61st out of 79 countries surveyed. Compare that to the 2015 testing. The country's ranking has dropped by 10 countries, although the number of countries surveyed is much higher. OECD testing measures the capacity of 15-year-olds in the disciplines of reading, mathematics, and natural sciences. In the field of reading, the average amount of points received by Albanian students was 405 points, or the same as 3 years ago. In the field of science, there is a decrease of 10 points to 417, while the trajectory for the discipline of mathematics is the most positive, increasing from 413 to 437 points. This change is also appreciated by the OECD, such as the advancements in teaching and the incentives put forward by the Albanian authorities to increase the enrollment rate of high school students. For the Balkan region, Croatia ranks the highest in 29th place, Serbia in 45th place, Montenegro in 52nd, Macedonia in 67th, while Kosovo ranks the worst, 77th out of 79 in total. Here again, Asian countries like China and Singapore are leaders in the rankings, followed by Estonia as one of the European countries with the best secondary education system. And that's the news across the country today. Thank you so much for watching the English edition this evening, and be sure to join us again every Monday to Saturday at 6 p.m. for the latest news from Albania. Once again, on behalf of Ora News, thank you and have a good night.